Steven Spielberg's beloved alien adventure wasn't always destined to be a heartwarming family classic. It started as a horror movie about malevolent extraterrestrials terrorizing a Kentucky farm. From the shocking product placement rejection that changed candy history to the famous face that inspired E.T.'s wrinkled features, this 1982 masterpiece hides secrets stranger than science fiction. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Fact 1. E.T. started as a horror movie. Before E.T. became the heartwarming tale of friendship we all know and love, Steven Spielberg was developing something completely different. A terrifying horror movie about malevolent aliens attacking a helpless family. In the late 1970s, after the massive success of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Columbia Pictures wanted Spielberg to create a sequel, but the director had no interest in revisiting that story. However, he also didn't want the studio to make a sequel without him, just like what had happened with Jaws. So he came up with an alternative that would satisfy their demands while giving him creative control. Spielberg's solution was a project initially called Watch the Skies, later renamed Night Skies due to rights issues. The concept was based on an allegedly true account from 1955, where a Kentucky family claimed they had been terrorized by gremlin-like aliens on their farm. UFO researcher J. Allen Hynek had told Spielberg about this incident while they were working together on Close Encounters, and it stuck in the director's mind as perfect material for a dark, horror-driven follow-up. Spielberg brought in writer John Sayles, who was known for creature features like Piranha and would later write The Howling, to develop the treatment into a full screenplay. The Night Skies script featured 11 malicious extraterrestrial scientists who would experiment on farm animals to determine which Earth species were sentient before turning their attention to terrorizing a human family. Among these hostile aliens was one character named Scar, described as having a beak-like mouth and grasshopper eyes, who could kill farm animals simply by touching them with his glowing finger. The story opened with Scar using this deadly power and was designed to be much darker than anything Spielberg had created before. However, there was one subplot that captured the director's imagination, a storyline involving Buddy, the only kind alien among the group, who would form a friendship with the family's autistic son. As development continued, Spielberg found himself increasingly drawn to this single element of compassion within the horror story. The idea of Buddy being abandoned on Earth by his cruel companions at the script's end became the seed that would eventually grow into E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. When Spielberg met screenwriter Melissa Matheson in 1980, he told her about Night Skies, and specifically about Buddy's story, which inspired them to develop an entirely new project focused on the friendship between a lonely boy and a stranded alien. The horror concept was completely abandoned, and what emerged instead was the gentle, emotional story that would become one of cinema's most beloved films. Fact 2. M&M's rejected the movie deal. One of the most famous product placement stories in Hollywood history began with a simple request that Mars Incorporated would come to deeply regret. When Steven Spielberg and his team were developing E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial in the early 1980s, screenwriter Melissa Matheson's original script called for Elliot to leave a trail of E, M, and M's candies to lure the shy alien out of the woods and into his home. This scene would become one of the movie's most memorable moments, but it almost featured completely different candy due to a corporate decision that still baffles marketing experts today. Producer Kathleen Kennedy reached out to Mars, the company behind M&M's, to propose a product placement deal that would feature their colorful candies prominently in what they hoped would be a successful family film. However, Mars executives were hesitant to associate their brand with the project, partly because Spielberg was keeping everything about the movie under wraps, including the script and the appearance of the titular alien character. When Universal Studios refused to show Mars the complete screenplay due to Spielberg's secrecy concerns, the candy company made their decision. According to various reports, Mars declined the opportunity, with some sources suggesting they found the alien creature too ugly or otherworldly to be linked with their family-friendly candy brand. With production deadlines looming and M&Ms off the table, Kennedy and Spielberg had to find an alternative quickly. They approached the Hershey Company, who saw an opportunity that Mars had missed. Hershey's executive, Jack Dowd, agreed to the product placement deal, but instead of using M&M's competitor Hershey Kisses, he suggested a newer product that needed a marketing boost: Reese's Pieces. The peanut butter candies had been struggling in the marketplace since their national introduction in 1980, and Dowd knew they needed something special to save them. Hershey agreed to spend $1 million promoting E.T. in exchange for featuring Reese's Pieces in the film and using the alien character in their advertising campaigns. When E.T. became a massive hit in June 1982, the results were immediate and dramatic. Within just 2 weeks of the movie's release, Reese's Pieces sales had tripled, with some distributors reordering the candy as many as 10 times during that short period. Dowd later calculated that his $1 million investment had resulted in an estimated $15 to $20 million worth of promotion for the brand. Fact 3. E.T.'s face was Albert Einstein. When Steven Spielberg was working with special effects designer Carlo Rambaldi to create the look of E.T., he didn't want the alien to appear frightening or monstrous like so many other movie creatures of the time. Instead, the director had a very specific vision that involved combining the facial features of some of history's most beloved and intellectually revered figures. Spielberg asked Rambaldi to study photographs of 3 particular men and incorporate their most distinctive characteristics into the alien's design, creating a face that would inspire trust and affection rather than fear. The 3 men whose features would become part of E.T.'s iconic appearance were physicist Albert Einstein, novelist Ernest Hemingway, and poet Carl Sandburg. Spielberg was particularly drawn to their eyes, which he felt conveyed a deep sense of wisdom and melancholy that would be perfect for his extraterrestrial character. According to Rambaldi, Spielberg specifically told him that he loved their eyes and wanted to capture that same sense of intelligence and sadness in E.T.'s face. The director reportedly said he wanted the alien's eyes to be as wizened and as sad as those 3 icons, believing that this emotional depth would help audiences immediately connect with the character. Rambaldi, who had previously worked with Spielberg on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, used these celebrity photographs as reference material while sculpting E.T.'s features. The designer also drew inspiration from his own 1952 painting called Women of Delta, which depicted a female figure with an elongated neck and distinctive facial structure that would influence E.T.'s overall head shape. Beyond the human references, Rambaldi incorporated elements from his own pet cat, particularly around the eyes, to create E.T.'s large, expressive gaze that would become one of the character's most memorable features. The combination of these various influences resulted in a face that looked both alien and strangely familiar, with features that audiences could relate to on an emotional level. Producer Kathleen Kennedy worked closely with eye specialists at the Jules Stein Eye Institute to ensure that E.T.'s eyes would be particularly engaging, understanding that they would be crucial for connecting with viewers and making the puppet feel truly alive. Fact 4. A chain-smoking housewife voiced E.T. The distinctive, raspy voice that made E.T. so memorable came from an unlikely source that sound designer Ben Burt discovered completely by chance while shopping for camera equipment. Pat Welsh was an elderly California housewife who had developed a uniquely gravelly voice from her longtime habit of smoking 2 packs of cigarettes every single day, creating exactly the kind of weathered, otherworldly sound that Bert was looking for to bring the alien character to life. Bert encountered Welsh at a camera shop in Marin County, where he overheard her talking and immediately recognized that her voice had the perfect quality for E.T.'s character. The decades of heavy smoking had given Welsh's voice a deep, scratchy texture that sounded both ancient and mysterious, which was exactly what the production team needed for their extraterrestrial visitor. After approaching her about the unusual job opportunity, Welsh agreed to help create one of cinema's most beloved characters. The recording process took place over 9.5 hours of studio sessions, during which Welsh spoke all of E.T.'s English dialogue, including the famous phrase, "E.T. phone home," and other key moments throughout the film. For this extensive voice work that would become an integral part of movie history, Welsh was paid just $380, a modest sum that seems almost comical, considering the cultural impact her voice would have on audiences worldwide. While Welsh provided the foundation for E.T.'s voice, Bert combined her recordings with sounds from 16 other sources to create the complete vocal character. These additional elements included contributions from Steven Spielberg himself, actress Deborah Winger, Bert's own sleeping wife, who had a cold at the time, a burp from his film professor at the University of Southern California, and various animal sounds including raccoons, sea otters, and horses. However, it was Welsh's chain smoker rasp that served as the primary vocal element, giving E.T. that distinctive quality that made the character sound both alien and somehow familiar. Despite her crucial contribution to the film's success, Welsh remained largely uncredited in the final movie release, making her one of Hollywood's most anonymous yet influential voice performers. Fact 5. Harrison Ford's deleted school principal scene. Harrison Ford actually filmed a complete cameo scene for E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, playing Elliot's stern school principal in what would have been one of the movie's most memorable moments. But the sequence was ultimately cut from the final version because Steven Spielberg realized Ford's star power was too overwhelming for the story he was trying to tell. The scene was supposed to take place after Elliot's disruptive behavior in biology class, where he had impulsively freed all the frogs that were meant to be dissected, inspired by his psychic connection to E.T., who was back at home getting drunk and watching television. Ford agreed to do the cameo partly because he was dating screenwriter Melissa Matheson at the time, and also because of his close working relationship with Spielberg from their collaboration on Raiders of the Lost Ark just 1 year earlier. The scene was designed to show Ford playing completely against type as an uptight, by-the-book school administrator rather than the roguish, adventurous characters he was famous for portraying. Interestingly, Ford's face was never actually shown in the scene, as it was filmed entirely from behind and in shadows to maintain Spielberg's deliberate choice to keep most adults out of the frame throughout the first half of the movie. The deleted scene featured Elliot sitting in the principal's office while Ford's character lectured him about the dangers of underage drinking and the importance of following school rules. As the principal turned to look out his office window and continued his stern speech, Elliot's chair began to slowly rise from the floor due to E.T.'s telekinetic powers being used back at the house to levitate communication equipment up the stairs. The chair lifted Elliot all the way to the ceiling before crashing back down, just as the principal turned around, creating a perfectly timed comedic moment that Ford's character completely missed. Despite the cleverness of the scene and Ford's willingness to participate, Spielberg ultimately decided that having such a recognizable movie star appear in the film would pull audiences out of the story and break the carefully maintained perspective he had established. The footage was later included as a bonus feature on the 1996 Laserdisc release, giving fans a glimpse of what might have been. Fact 6. Michael Jackson owned an E.T. puppet. Michael Jackson was such an enormous fan of E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial that he actually owned one of the original animatronic puppets used in the film, making him one of the few people in the world to have such a unique piece of movie history in their personal collection. The King of Pop's fascination with the alien character went far beyond casual movie appreciation, as he felt a deep personal connection to E.T.'s story of being different and trying to find acceptance in an unfamiliar world. Steven Spielberg recognized Jackson's genuine affection for the character and asked him to collaborate on an official companion audiobook for the movie, working alongside legendary producer Quincy Jones. The project was released in November 1982, just 2 weeks before Jackson's groundbreaking Thriller album hit stores, making it one of the most star-studded audiobook productions ever created. Jackson narrated the entire story of E.T., bringing his distinctive voice and emotional range to the beloved tale of friendship between Elliot and the stranded alien. During the recording sessions, Jackson became so emotionally invested in the story that he actually began crying when he reached the part where E.T. appears to die in the film. This genuine emotional response showed just how deeply the character and story resonated with the pop superstar who understood what it felt like to be seen as different and to long for understanding from others. Jackson later explained his connection to the character in an interview, saying that E.T. was in a strange place and wanted to be accepted, which was a situation he had found himself in many times when traveling from city to city all over the world. The audiobook became both a commercial and critical success, earning Jackson a Grammy Award in 1984 for Best Recording for Children. Jackson also noted that E.T. gave love and wanted love in return, which he felt was very much like himself, and that the alien had a special power that let him lift off and fly whenever he wanted to get away from things on Earth. Something Jackson said he could definitely identify with, given his own desire to escape the pressures of fame. Fact 7. Real doctors played the medical team. When Steven Spielberg needed medical professionals for the dramatic scenes where government scientists and doctors attempt to save E.T.'s life, he made the unusual decision to cast actual doctors and nurses from the University of Southern California Medical Center rather than hiring professional actors to play these roles. Spielberg believed that real medical professionals would be able to deliver the complex technical dialogue and medical terminology much more convincingly than actors who had simply memorized lines they didn't fully understand. The decision to use authentic medical personnel came from Spielberg's desire to make every aspect of the film feel as realistic as possible, even when dealing with the fantastical premise of treating an alien patient. He felt that actors performing lines filled with technical medical jargon would come across as unnatural and unconvincing to audiences, especially during such emotionally intense scenes where E.T. appears to be dying. By using real doctors and nurses, Spielberg ensured that the medical procedures and dialogue would have an authentic quality that trained actors might struggle to achieve. The casting process created an unexpected situation where local medical professionals began competing with each other for the chance to appear in what they suspected might become a major Hollywood production. According to reports from the set, there was actually some friendly rivalry among doctors at USC Medical Center, with many wanting to be part of Spielberg's mysterious new movie project. The medical staff were instructed to treat E.T. exactly as they would any human patient, speaking to the puppet with the same professional manner and concern they would show in their regular hospital work. This unusual casting choice added an extra layer of believability to some of the film's most emotional moments, as the real medical professionals brought genuine expertise and natural delivery to their roles. The doctors and nurses appeared in the scenes where government agents take over Elliot's house and attempt to save both E.T. and Elliot, who had become physically connected to the alien through their telepathic bond. Most of these medical professionals remained uncredited in the final film, but their authentic performances helped ground the movie's more fantastical elements in medical reality. Fact 8. A legless child performed E.T.'s kitchen scenes. One of the most memorable and comedic sequences in E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial features the alien stumbling around Elliot's kitchen in a drunken stupor after consuming several cans of beer, and these scenes were actually performed by 12-year-old Matthew Demerit, who was born without legs but had become incredibly skilled at walking on his hands. Demerit's unique physical abilities made him the perfect performer to bring E.T.'s awkward, unsteady movements to life during these crucial scenes where the alien is exploring the house while Elliot is away at school. The kitchen scenes were particularly important to the story because they showed E.T. experiencing human pleasures like alcohol and television for the first time, while also establishing the telepathic connection between the alien and Elliot. As E.T. becomes increasingly intoxicated from the beer, Elliot begins to feel the effects at school, leading to his disruptive behavior in biology class, where he frees the frogs meant for dissection. Creating convincing drunk movements for an alien character required someone who could move in ways that looked both otherworldly and genuinely unsteady. Demerit's natural way of moving on his hands created exactly the kind of strange, tottering gait that Spielberg needed for these scenes. The young performer could stumble and fall in ways that looked both authentic and endearingly clumsy, perfectly capturing E.T.'s confusion as he navigates an unfamiliar environment while under the influence of alcohol. His movements had to appear both alien-like and believably intoxicated, a combination that would have been extremely difficult for a traditional stunt performer to achieve convincingly. The production team worked with 3 different performers to bring E.T. to life in various scenes throughout the movie. While 2 little people named Tamara Detrow and Pat Bailon handled most of E.T.'s walking scenes, Demerit specialized in the more physically demanding sequences that required falling, stumbling, or moving in awkward positions. His contribution to these beloved kitchen scenes helped create some of the film's most entertaining moments, showing E.T.'s childlike curiosity about human culture while setting up the emotional connection between the alien and Elliot that drives the entire story. Fact 9. Penis breath was completely improvised. One of the most memorable lines in E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial came about completely by accident when 10-year-old Henry Thomas improvised an insult that wasn't in the original script, creating a moment so authentic and funny that Steven Spielberg decided to keep it in the final version of the movie. During the dinner table scene where Elliot is trying to convince his family that he's encountered an alien in their backyard, his older brother Michael teases him mercilessly about his wild claims, leading to a heated exchange between the 2 boys. The script called for Elliot to respond angrily to Michael's mocking, but it didn't specify exactly what insult the young actor should use, leaving Thomas free to come up with something that felt natural for his character. In a moment of genuine childhood frustration, Thomas blurted out, "It was nothing like that, penis breath," a phrase that caught everyone on set completely off guard, including Dee Wallace, who was playing their mother, Mary, in the scene. Wallace was supposed to sternly reprimand Elliot for his outburst, but when she heard Thomas deliver such an unexpectedly crude insult, with perfect 10-year-old indignation, she couldn't help but break character and laugh. Her genuine reaction of trying to suppress her amusement while attempting to scold Elliot created a wonderfully authentic moment that felt much more real than anything that could have been scripted and rehearsed. Spielberg was delighted by this spontaneous interaction between his actors and recognized that Thomas had stumbled upon exactly the kind of insult that a frustrated kid might actually use when arguing with an older sibling. The line perfectly captured Elliot's age and personality while also serving Spielberg's goal of avoiding a dreaded G rating for the film. According to screenwriter Melissa Matheson, the phrase penis breath was actually something she had heard from a child during her previous work as a babysitter, making Thomas's improvised choice even more authentic to how real children actually speak when they're angry. The moment became one of the film's most quoted lines and demonstrated how sometimes the best movie moments come from actors simply being natural and spontaneous. Fact 10. The film was shot chronologically. Steven Spielberg made the highly unusual decision to film E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial in complete chronological order from beginning to end, breaking with standard Hollywood practice where scenes are typically shot out of sequence based on location availability, actor schedules, and budget considerations. This approach was specifically chosen to help the young cast members deliver more authentic, emotional performances throughout the story, allowing them to experience the same emotional journey as their characters, rather than jumping around between different emotional states from day to day. Most movies are filmed with scenes shot completely out of order, which can make it extremely difficult for actors to maintain consistent emotional arcs, especially for children who may not have the experience to artificially recreate complex feelings on command. Spielberg recognized that his story depended heavily on the genuine emotional connection between the child actors and E.T., particularly during the heartbreaking final scenes where they have to say goodbye to their alien friend. By filming chronologically, he ensured that the children would naturally develop real attachment to the E.T. puppet over the course of production, making their eventual farewell feel completely genuine. To enhance this emotional authenticity even further, Spielberg kept the E.T. puppet completely hidden from Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore, and Robert McNaughton until the cameras were actually rolling for their first scenes together. This meant that their initial reactions of surprise, curiosity, and wonder upon seeing E.T. were completely real and unscripted. The director also made sure that the puppeteers operating E.T. stayed hidden from the child actors throughout the entire production, maintaining the illusion that E.T. was a living creature rather than a mechanical puppet. This chronological filming approach created genuine emotional experiences for the young performers as they spent months bonding with their alien co-star. When the time came to film the movie's emotional climax, where E.T. appears to die and then must leave Earth forever, the children had developed such strong attachments to the character that their tears and heartbreak were completely authentic. Spielberg later said he calculated that the film would have much greater emotional impact if the children were really saying goodbye to E.T., and the chronological shooting schedule made that genuine emotion possible. Fact 11. E.T.'s secret name is Zrek. The beloved alien character that audiences know simply as E.T. actually had a real name that was never revealed in the original film, but would have been disclosed in a sequel that Steven Spielberg and screenwriter Melissa Matheson developed shortly after the first movie's massive success. In the unmade sequel treatment titled E.T. 2: Nocturnal Fears, the friendly extraterrestrial's true name was revealed to be Zrek, pronounced exactly like it's spelled with a hard Z sound, followed by wreck. Not long after E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial became a cultural phenomenon in 1982, Spielberg and Matheson wrote a 9-page treatment for a follow-up story that would have taken the franchise in a much darker direction than the original film. This sequel concept featured Elliot and his friends being kidnapped by a group of malevolent aliens who were very different from the gentle botanist they had befriended in the first movie. The evil aliens would have tortured and experimented on the children, forcing them to contact E.T. for help in escaping their terrifying situation. The treatment revealed that E.T.'s species had individual names just like humans, and that Elliot's alien friend had been known as Zrek among his own people all along. This detail would have added a new layer of intimacy to their relationship, as Elliot would finally learn his friend's true identity rather than just calling him by the simple nickname that described what he was. The sequel was designed to explore the idea that not all extraterrestrials were as kind and peaceful as the character audiences had fallen in love with. Despite having a complete treatment ready to go, Spielberg ultimately decided against making the sequel because he felt it would undermine the innocence and wonder of the original film. He believed that creating a darker follow-up story would rob the original of its virginity and tarnish the pure emotional experience that E.T. had provided to audiences worldwide. The treatment remains one of Hollywood's most famous unmade sequels, and Zrek remains the only official name that E.T. has ever been given, even though most fans will never know this secret detail about their favorite alien character. Fact 12. Deborah Winger voiced E.T. too. Academy Award-nominated actress Deborah Winger had not one but two surprising roles in E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, contributing both her distinctive husky voice to the alien character and making a bizarre on-screen appearance that most viewers never notice even after multiple viewings. Steven Spielberg specifically sought out Winger to help create E.T.'s voice during the production process, asking her to record temporary dialogue that would be used while they were filming scenes with the puppet before the final voice work was completed in post-production. Winger spent 1 or 2 days in the recording studio reading every single line of E.T.'s dialogue into a tape recorder, providing Spielberg with a complete vocal performance that he could use as a guide while directing the puppet scenes. Her naturally raspy voice quality made her an ideal choice for contributing to E.T.'s distinctive sound, and some elements of her voice work actually made it into the final film alongside the other vocal contributors. Winger later recalled that Spielberg had simply asked her to come in and record a few sentences for a picture he was making about a cute alien coming to a small suburban home, though she admitted she never actually watched the finished movie because she couldn't bear to see anything she appeared in. Even more surprising than her vocal contribution was Winger's strange cameo appearance during the Halloween trick-or-treating sequence, where she appears in full costume as one of the creepy characters wandering through the neighborhood. Dressed as a ghoulish doctor or scientist, Winger wore a monster mask and lab coat, while carrying a small poodle that was also wearing a costume, creating one of the film's most bizarre and unexpected celebrity appearances. The scene occurs when Elliot and E.T. are walking through the neighborhood on Halloween night, and Winger's costumed character can be spotted among the other trick-or-treaters for just a few seconds. This dual contribution from Winger demonstrates how many different elements went into creating E.T.'s character, with sound designer Ben Burt combining voices from 16 different people and various animal sounds to build the alien's complete vocal personality. Winger's involvement in both the voice work and the visual appearance of the film shows how collaborative the entire production was, with even established Hollywood stars willing to take on small, uncredited roles to help bring Spielberg's vision to life. Fact 13. The Atari game burial was real. One of the most infamous disasters in video game history turned out to be literally buried in the desert, as the terrible E.T. Atari game that was rushed into production for the 1982 Christmas season was so poorly received that millions of unsold cartridges were actually dumped in a New Mexico landfill and covered with concrete. For over 30 years, this story was dismissed as an urban legend by many people in the gaming industry, but in April 2014, excavators hired to investigate the claim confirmed that the Alamogordo landfill did indeed contain massive quantities of buried ET cartridges. The video game disaster began when Atari secured the rights to create an ET game and gave programmer Howard Scott Warshaw just 5 weeks to design and complete the entire project in time for the holiday shopping season. This impossibly short development timeline meant that Warshaw had to rush through every aspect of game creation, from basic programming to testing and debugging, without the months or even years that complex games typically require. The result was a confusing, frustrating game that most players found nearly impossible to understand or enjoy. When the ET game was released in December 1982, it was immediately criticized for its poor graphics, confusing gameplay, and numerous technical problems that made it extremely difficult to play. Nearly every aspect of the game faced heavy criticism from both professional reviewers and regular players, who found the controls unresponsive and the objectives unclear. The game became such a commercial failure that it has since been considered one of the worst video games ever made and is frequently cited as a major contributing factor to the video game industry crash of 1983. Atari had manufactured millions of ET cartridges in anticipation of strong holiday sales, but the game was so poorly received that enormous quantities remained unsold in warehouses across the country. Rather than continuing to store these worthless cartridges indefinitely, the company decided to dispose of them in the most cost-effective way possible. Reports from 1983 described trucks carrying millions of unsold cartridges to a landfill in Alamogordo, New Mexico, where they were dumped into a large pit and covered with layers of concrete to prevent scavenging. Fact 14. Yoda's theme plays during Halloween. During one of E.T.'s most charming moments on Halloween night, composer John Williams secretly included a musical reference to another one of his most famous film scores, creating a hidden connection between two beloved movie franchises that most audiences never consciously notice. When E.T. spots a child dressed as Yoda walking down the street and excitedly exclaims, "Home!" while reaching toward the costumed trick-or-treater, Williams subtly wove Yoda's theme from The Empire Strikes Back into the background music, played softly on flute as the little Jedi character walks away from the camera. This musical Easter egg represents a playful tribute from Williams to his own work, as he had composed both E.T.'s score and the Star Wars music, including the distinctive theme for the Wise Jedi Master that first appeared in the 1980 film The Empire Strikes Back. The inclusion of Yoda's theme was Williams's way of acknowledging the visual reference that Steven Spielberg had included in the scene, creating a deeper connection between the two science fiction universes through music as well as imagery. The moment also reflects the close friendship between Spielberg and Star Wars creator George Lucas, who were film school friends and frequent collaborators who enjoyed including references to each other's work in their movies. Spielberg had already featured Star Wars toys prominently throughout E.T., showing Elliot playing with action figures and other merchandise from Lucas's space opera, so including the musical reference felt like a natural extension of this cross-pollination between the two filmmakers' projects. In archive footage from the film's production, Spielberg can be seen discussing this musical choice with Williams, with the director asking whether anyone would actually notice the subtle reference. Williams himself questioned whether audiences would pick up on the Yoda theme, but both men seemed delighted by the idea of including this hidden musical joke for the few listeners who might catch it. The reference became even more meaningful years later when Lucas returned the favor by including 3 E.T. characters as members of the Galactic Senate in Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, officially connecting the two fictional universes and completing the circle of references between the longtime collaborators. Fact 15. E.T. could perform 150 different movements. The mechanical E.T. puppet that brought the beloved alien to life was one of the most sophisticated animatronic creations ever built for a movie at that time, capable of performing over 150 different movements that made the character appear remarkably lifelike and emotionally expressive. Special effects designer Carlo Rambaldi constructed the puppet using a complex combination of steel framework, polyurethane foam, rubber skin, and hydraulic and electronic control systems that allowed operators to manipulate every aspect of E.T.'s appearance with incredible precision and subtlety. The puppet's movement capabilities were broken down into 85 different body motions and 35 distinct facial expressions, giving the character an unprecedented range of physical and emotional communication. The body movements included everything from basic gestures like extending his glowing finger to more complex actions like tilting his head, moving his arms, and even the famous neck extension that became one of E.T.'s most recognizable traits. The facial expressions ranged from subtle changes around the eyes that conveyed different emotions to more dramatic movements of the mouth and brow that helped sell the illusion that E.T. was truly alive. Creating this level of mechanical sophistication required Rambaldi to essentially build a small robot that could be controlled by multiple puppeteers working together in perfect coordination. The puppet's internal mechanisms were so complex that it required a team of operators to bring E.T. to life during filming, with different technicians responsible for controlling various aspects of the character's movements and expressions. The hydraulic and electronic systems had to be precisely calibrated to create smooth, natural-looking motions that wouldn't appear jerky or mechanical on camera. The puppet was so advanced for its time that it cost $250,000 to build, representing a significant portion of the film's $10.5 million budget. Rambaldi's creation was so convincing that it fooled not only movie audiences, but also some of the people working on the film itself, with reports that some crew members and even young Drew Barrymore genuinely believed E.T. was a real living creature rather than an elaborate mechanical puppet controlled by hidden operators.